It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
This week, I'm not sure if you saw this in the news, Mrs. Happy Families, but a moon landing occurred. The United States, for the first time since the 1960s, has sent a probe up to the moon. No people this time, but there's a probe on the moon. A moon landing has occurred. We're getting images from the moon. I think this is fascinating. I think it's amazing that this is happening. Did you know, I was Googling, did you know that Australia is wider than the moon?
Australia is wider.
Wider than the moon. Okay,
so if the moon was here and it was sitting on top of Australia, Australia would still be bigger.
That's a great way to picture it. Yeah, I can imagine the moon literally landing on Australia, and there would be space on either end of Australia where you could sort of look up at the moon from the east or the west coast. I found this. The moon sits at 3,400 kilometres in diameter. If you were to pass a skewer all the way through the moon from one end to the other through outer space, you would need to have a 3,400 kilometre long wooden skewer to push it through the moon. You could go east to west on
one big barbecue.
On the Australian continent. It would take 4,000 kilometres. 4,000 kilometres versus 3,400 Ks. Australia is wider than the moon. I found that on the We Are Teachers Weird Fun Facts. You know another fun fact? I know that this is not what our podcast is about today. Headphones can increase the bacteria in your ears. Wearing headphones for just an hour could increase the bacteria in your ears by 700 times.
Yeah, when I wear those little earbuds, my ears get really hot and they almost like sweaty.
Do you need to get like cotton tips after you've been wearing them and clean your ears out?
I don't like them at all.
Yeah, anyway, today we digress.
Seriously, I do not know where your head goes sometimes. It's so hard to follow you.
ADHD. That's just it. Four letters, ADHD. Hey, let's dive into today's podcast, Kylie. Every Friday, we talk about the things that we've done right or things that we've done wrong in aid of intentional parenting. We're trying to be better. It's called I'll Do Better Tomorrow. Here's a fun fact for you. I've been traveling so much and speaking so much that I'm barely home, and I'm trying to write a book at the same time. So I'm kind of doing either not home at all or 14, 15-hour days kind of stuff.
You know that adage that you once a parent, always a parent?
No. No, yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I'm supposed. So I'm going to struggle with I'll Do Better Tomorrow today. So what I'd like you to do is go first so I can try to think of something to talk about. Have you had a win? Have you had a loss? Are things going right? Are things going wrong? What can we learn about the parenting that you've engaged with this week? Kylie Coulson, Mrs. Happy Families.
A couple of days ago, we reached out to our Facebook following and asked them to share with us the best parenting advice they've ever received.
Very, very best.
And I don't want to give too much away because we are actually going to share the best of the best next week.
On Monday.
One of the pieces of advice that was given and shared really just struck a chord with me. It's not new. I've heard it before and you and I have actually spoken about it. But it was never let go of your child first when you embrace.
Yeah. When you hug, hold on until they let go.
And I've noticed over the last few weeks that one of our children who is not particularly huggy has been wanting hugs a lot. And because she's not particularly huggy, I've kind of just been pressing into her and then kind of moving on. But she's been holding on. And so when I read that, it just reminded me how important that time is. And so I've been really focusing on spending that time and just making sure that she's the one who lets go first.
So good. So good.
As part of that, we have a weekly phone call with our daughter, Abby, who is volunteering over in England at the moment. And we're not able to call her throughout the week. So this is the one time we get to catch up with her. And usually we FaceTime. And most of the times, because of the time difference, she's calling me right in the middle of dinner time.
Right.
There's lots going on. I'm taking kids here and there and I'm trying to get dinner on the table. And so more times than not, I'm not actually fully focused on her. I'm going about doing my things. We're having a conversation, but I clearly miss a lot of the facial dynamics that take place. And at one point this week when we were talking, there was a lull in the conversation. I just decided to sit down and really kind of check in and focus on her for a few moments. And she just had this massive grin on her face. And I looked at her and I said, why are you grinning so much? Like, what's going on? And she said, I just love you, Mum. And if I'm perfectly honest, I was feeling really flat that day and I'd had a really, really big weekend, just lots of different challenges to deal with. And I wasn't feeling really the best. And to just have that beautiful moment of connection where eye to eye contact and just that acknowledgement that in spite of the fact that she knows how busy things are and that I wasn't able to be fully present for her in that moment, there was just this joy in her eyes that I saw and in her voice that just said, I know that what I'm asking of you right now is hard, but I'm just so grateful you're here with me right now. And I thought about just the challenges that I had growing up with my mum and just this acknowledgement that often we become what we've observed our whole lives. The relationship I've strived to build with our girls is very different to the relationship I had growing up. It's not what I observed. It's not what I experienced. So for me, it was just this beautiful reminder of how important being intentional with our children is. Having not experienced the level of relationship that I have with my children, it would be really easy to revert back to those kind of old ways of doing things. And yet, in spite of my own shortcomings as a mum and as an individual, I have really worked hard to build those relationships, and those little moments of time, it just feels like it's been worth it.
It reminds me of the gold flecks story. There's the story of the young prospector goes off to the gold rush, sits down by the river, panning for gold, desperate to find heaps of gold. He's there until he's completely destitute and broke, collects a big pile of rocks beside him while he's doing all this panning, keeps on pulling rocks out of the river, but no gold nuggets. And when he's about to go home with no money left, about to head back to the big city and ask his parents to take him back in, a wise and wealthy prospector walks past and kicks at the pile of rocks and says, looks like you got a big pile of rocks there. And the young man's cranky about it and he says, I've been here for months and I've spent all my savings and I'm looking for gold flecks. I want nuggets like you've got in your pouch and I've got nothing, just nothing but a pile of rocks. The prospector stops and says, I think that you're missing something here. And he reaches down, picks up one of those rocks, sort of cracks it on the tin and crumples it in his hand and holds it out to the young man. And in amongst all the rock, there are these tiny little flecks of gold. And the young man says, no, I don't want flecks of gold. I know they're in the rocks. I want nuggets like you've got in your pouch. Second time he said it. The old man opens up his pouch and says, take a look. The young man looks into the pouch and sees that rather than a whole lot of gold nuggets, there's just thousands and thousands of these tiny flecks of gold. And that's when the old man says the greatest line. He says, young man, it's the steady accumulation of these flecks of gold that has made me wealthy. I reckon when it comes to family life, it's the same principle that applies. Family life is rocky and bumpy and dirty and messy and wet. Sometimes family life is just gross and hard and it leaves you feeling
like you've got a big pile of rocks.
Yeah, that's right. Literally, you look around the house sometimes and you feel like emotionally you're carrying a bag of rocks. But if we are wise, we will discover that each one of those rocks is full of gold flecks. We've just got to be willing to do the hard work and look for them and collect them. And if we collect enough of them, there's thousands of them rolling down the river of family life every single day. And if we're willing to do the hard work and collect them, they will make us rich. I love that story. I'm so glad that you shared it. I have thought of something that I can share while I've been listening to you think about how nice it is for kids to actually love you. It's one thing for us to love our kids. It's another thing entirely for us to like them. And I really like our kids. And I love hearing a story like that. My I'll do better tomorrow. Well, it's only kind of a little bit mine, but this is a big shift for me. So you've just got to just let me do it anyway. My mum has this habit of sending us stuff. Usually unwanted, usually stuff that we end up giving away ourselves. It doesn't even get unpacked quite often. She just wants to give all the time. It's a wonderful, wonderful flaw in her character because she's constantly giving us stuff that we don't want.
She is a giving person, but it also comes from that whole waste not, want not mentality.
Yeah.
She hates throwing things out, but she also recognises she doesn't need it. So she's not a hoarder.
No.
She just likes to pass on.
That's exactly what it is. So she gave me my grandfather's pocket watch. Like, it's got the chain and it's got the watch. Like, it's a family heirloom, right? But she said, do you think you'll use this? Like, what sort of a question is that? Or let me get my pocket watch out of my suit pocket. Anyway, she picks stuff up secondhand all the time as well. So it's not that she's just passing things along that she happens to have. If she sees a bargain at a garage sale, like
she's at a friend's place and they're like, do you know anyone who needs this?
She'll say, yes, I do. I'll give it to Justin and Kylie. So the other day, she scored one of those. I don't know the backstory. I haven't even asked, but she scores one of those. There's some sort of fancy backyard play equipment thing. They're called a Vooly. I think that's the name of the brand. It's not sponsored. I have no idea what it really is. All I know is it's an expensive backyard play set. Like, it's kind of like a swing set, monkey bar, climbing rope, all that kind of stuff. She scores this Vooly, but to get it to us, she's going to have to pay an inordinate amount of money. And so she makes Dad get in a truck and drive it from the New South Wales Central Coast, more than 1,000 k's north to the Sunshine Coast. He literally walks into the yard, drops it off, and gets in the little truck that he was in and drives back to the Central Coast. And I'm looking at this thing going, there's no way I can assemble it. Fortunately, she paid someone to come and assemble it because this thing has pieces everywhere. But as it's going up, I'm like, this thing's 5 meters by 5 meters. It's got a sunshade. It's got all this stuff all over it. It's definitely in secondhand condition, but hey, whatever. But I'm looking at it and going, and this is the big thing, Kylie. I have got the best lawn in our suburb. Like,
well, I was just thinking,
I love
you've spent
our
the last
lawn.
2 years getting our lawn.
Oh my goodness,
absolutely perfect.
I love a perfect lawn, and now there is this great big play thing, this great big 5 meter by 5 meter.
Have you counted how many poles you're going
with
to
all of
have to
these
whip
poles in the ground? Well, I had to whip snip around it just the other day, and I'm thinking, this is killing my grass. I've got the best, luscious, most beautiful, perfect grass, and this is going to do. And it's added at least 30 minutes every single time I mow the lawn, because I've got to whip a snip around all of these poles, and then I've got to mow in and out and sideways and backwards and upside. Like, it is. Oh, gee whiz. And I'm getting so frustrated about it. But guess what? We're keeping it. We're keeping it. That's my older better tomorrow.
That's your older better
My mum provided us with some secondhand Vooly thing that we didn't ask for and that we don't want, and I'm keeping it. And do you know why? We're keeping it because there's a quote. Actually, when I was thinking about what to talk about, I just did a quick Google. There's this former baseball player, apparently by the name of Harmon Killebrew. Don't know anything about baseball. Don't know anything about Harmon Killebrew. Don't even know if it's a true story. But apparently Harmon Killebrew, he goes on to become a professional baseball player. But when he's a kid, his parents are having an argument in the kitchen one night because the kids are out in the yard and they're tearing up the grass, playing football and baseball and billy carts and just making a mess of the backyard. And the mum in the backyard, she says the kids are ruining the backyard. And the dad turns around and says the most brilliant response. He says, we're not raising grass. We're raising, I'm going to get weepy. We're not raising grass. We're raising boys. And I just love it. I love it so much that I'm going to get some more playground equipment and totally destroy my grass. Our kids can't listen to what's about to be said, okay? So if you're in the car listening back to this, you need to not let them hear this. We're buying a trampoline for one of their birthdays. Trampolines will destroy my grass even more, but there's just enough space for it. The kids need to be outside and active. And since that thing has gone in, as much as I hate to say it, the kids keep going out there and swinging on those monkey bars and playing on that swing set and climbing that rope and doing little exercises on the side bits. Like, they are fully in. They're absolutely doing it. I'm just thinking, we try to have a display home, but a house is meant to be lived in. We want the car to be spotless, but the kids have got to sit in the back and actually get through the long drives that we're doing. We're raising kids that have big opinions and they talk back, but of course they're going to be clumsy while they learn the art and the craft of responding with their ideas. I love my kids and I want them to have opportunities to use their bodies and grow and be strong. And my mum was right. I hate saying it, but my mum was right. And my older better tomorrow is, it's worth having the stuff that the kids can play with, even if it makes a mess and even if it does our heads in, because they're only kids for such a short time. Such a short time. We need to let them be little.
I had no idea where you were going with this because you definitely cannot take credit for any of that.
Oh, come on. But I've changed my attitude. That's the I'll do better tomorrow.
But you have changed your attitude.
Except when I have to mow around it.
There was never going to be a trampoline in our yard.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. We really hope that you got something out of our conversation today about how to make your family happier and how to help your kids to absolutely flourish. Give them a great big hug. Let them be little. They are just so wonderful. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday with the very best parenting advice that you have ever heard.